Aha!
Not exactly convenient.
John.
I know. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the June 10th meeting of the Apex Planning Board. If we could all have a moment of silence, please. We rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, do we have any items of information?
Yes, we had one item that I was asked to pass along. So you may recall the New Hill Holloman rezoning 24 CZ03, potentially for a YMCA. When it went to town council, we did work with the applicant in order to have the zoning conditions be such that staff did end up recommending approval. And so that was approved. And so I was asked to update you all since it had gone through with different conditions through you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, now I'm going to open for public comment. The purpose of public comment is to allow the public to speak on items that do not appear in the agenda under public hearings. Any member of the public wishing to comment on the public hearing will be called at the appropriate time later in the agenda. The public comment period is an opportunity for the public to express concerns or opinions, but is not intended to be a question and answer session. The public may comment on any non-public hearing item, including new business items that appear later in the agenda. If there's a large number of speakers for one particular item, we may ask that a representative be selected to speak for the entire group and limit the comment to no more than 9 minutes. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment this afternoon? Anybody had not had an opportunity to sign up? All right, I will close public comment and move on to consent item number 1. So everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes from the May 13th meeting. Would love to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written from May 13th, 2024.
Thank you. And a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to public hearings. If you have not had an opportunity and are interested in speaking before on one of the public hearing items, please do so. Over here to my left, your right. And item number 1, Lauren.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. All right, this is rezoning case 24CZ05, located at 2228 Kelly Road. This property is located in the general area south of Apex Barbecue Road. The subject property is approximately 4.067 acres and is located west of Kelly Road, north of Holland Road, and is surrounded by single-family residential land uses. The property contains an existing residential structure and then is heavily vegetated along the southern portion of the property. The property is currently zoned residential agricultural. The adjacent zonings are to the north, south, and east, residential agricultural, and to the west, rural residential and residential agricultural. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to medium-density conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map classification for the subject property is medium-density residential. The proposed rezoning to medium-density conditional zoning is consistent with that land use classification. A letter of impact from Wake County Public School Systems was received for this rezoning and is included in the staff report packet. Wake County Public School Systems indicates that elementary, middle, and high school grade level within the current assignment area for the proposed rezoning development are anticipated to have insufficient capacity for future students. Transportation to schools outside of the current assignment area should be anticipated. School expansion or construction within the next 5 years may address concerns at the elementary and high school grade levels. The applicant conducted neighborhood meetings on February 29th and May 23rd, 2024. The neighborhood meeting reports are attached. A full list of the proposed uses and zoning conditions can be found on page 2 of the staff report. The applicant is proposing uses such as church or place of worship and residential uses permitted in the medium density zoning districts such as single family, duplex, townhouse detached, and accessory apartment. Besides the architectural zoning conditions related to new non-residential and residential development, there are a few zoning conditions I would like to point out. There shall be a maximum of 19 residential uses on the property. Homeowner association covenants shall not restrict the construction of accessory dwelling units. If residential uses are developed on the property, the project shall include a substreet to, instead of reading the pen, it's better to point out just this western property and somewhere along this property line. And to kind of go over the transportation, conditions 11, 12, and 13, obviously Russell's here if you have any questions related to them, but I wanted to kind of point out 11, 12, and 13 and show you an aerial to kind of go over them more in depth. So zoning condition number 11 refers to if the property is developed for residential uses. So if the property is developed for residential uses, then the driveway access shall be right in, right out, and the driveways shall be located in a minimum distance of 250 feet from the intersection of Kelly Road and Holland Road, subject to the Town of Apex and NCDOT approval. And on the aerial, you can see a rough estimate of the minimum distances with the red X's. It is a rough estimate, so hopefully it's about 250 feet. Zoning condition number 12 refers to if a site plan is submitted for the existing residential structure to be redeveloped as a church or place of worship, then the site access may be from the existing driveway on Kelly Road, and no road improvements shall be required, or from the new full movement driveway on Holland Road, subject to NCDOT approval of a driveway permit, and the existing driveway on Kelly Road shall be closed. Zoning condition number 13 refers to if the property is redeveloped and a site plan is submitted for a building of 10,000 square feet or greater in size, a full movement driveway shall be permitted on Holland Road. Oops, Holland Road right here. And development shall include the following: construction of an eastbound left turn lane on Holland Road, starting west of the proposed site driveway and extending to the Holland Road, Kelly Road intersection, with a 100-foot taper, 100-foot full width lane, and a break for the proposed site driveway. Right-of-way dedication at the intersection of Holland Road and Kelly Road for a future 2x1 roundabout subject to the Town of Apex and NCDOT approval. Roadway frontage widening for the length of the property's Holland Road frontage, consistent with a 3-lane roadway section recommended by the Town of Apex Transportation Plan. Roadway frontage widening for the length of the property's Kelly Road frontage, consistent with the 4-lane roadway section recommended by the Apex Transportation Plan. The Environmental Advisory Board held a pre-application meeting for this rezoning on May 16th, 2024. The zoning conditions suggested by the EAB are listed on page 5 of the staff report, along with the applicant's response to each condition, and whether the applicant provided the conditions or not. Planning staff recommends approval of rezoning case 24CZ05, 2228 Kelly Road with conditions offered by the applicant. The 2045 land use map classifies the subject properties as medium density residential. The proposed rezoning to medium density conditional zoning is consistent with that land use classification. The rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it will provide stricter environmental conditions than the UDO requires, architectural conditions to encourage development that is compatible with the surrounding development, and appropriate transportation improvements based on the type of future uses. I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Russell, for any transportation related conditions, and the applicants in the audience as well. And we've, not to jump ahead, but we've also received public hearing emails and letters. We received an email from a neighbor, Matt Cook. He received it on April 24th. It was before legal ads went out, but I wanted to include that since the neighbor did reach out to the planning board, so it's there. And Mr. and Miss Rose also provided a letter, which was forwarded to you, I think, from late last week, so they also provided comments.
Have any questions? I have a question as it relates to the roundabout. If you can go over that again, just because I'm trying to envision that.
Sure, and
maybe, I don't know if Russell, I'm just trying to envision it.
definitely. So the right-of-way dedication at the intersection of Holland Road and Kelly Road for a future 2x1 roundabout, subject to the Town of Apex and NCDOT approval. That condition?
Yes.
Perfect. Russell, if you don't mind to assist Chair Sherman, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We do show a roundabout on our transportation plan. Some years ago, we were directed by council to identify future locations on our transportation network where we thought roundabouts would be feasible. So we worked with the Department of Transportation on that. The instruction at the time was if those cannot be included as improvements as part of development, when development occurs, we would at least get the right-of-way for future construction of the roundabouts. We did this at the intersection of Green Level Church at Jinks Road, where a traffic signal went in, and there were some improvements. We got some extra right-of-way dedication there. It would be the same situation here. So we would need to have some kind of a concept plan at the time of site plan to make sure we get the appropriate amount of right-of-way dedication.
That's exactly what I was thinking, the grade level. And okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Russell.
Any additional questions for Lauren?
No questions. I've just got a comment. I applaud the concept of the roundabout there, particularly, and the location that you've limited the ingress-egress point onto Kelly Road. That's a funny little hill right there. And I ride that hill pretty often, and there's some high speeds. I don't know what the 85th is, but putting that ingress-egress point up higher on the hill is certainly, I think, a far better idea than having it closer down to the intersection. So I applaud that, and I think that the roundabout will certainly help with the southbound speeds.
All right. So no additional comments or questions to the applicant? Wish to? Okay. I saw you gearing up there.
I'll just take from here.
No, you're good. Good evening, Chair Sherman and members of the board. Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Here this evening on behalf of the property owner and the applicant, the St. Paul American Coptic Orthodox Church. Several members of the church are with me this afternoon, and they're excited about the prospect of this site. They closed on the site last year. And the goal, really the purpose of the rezoning is to adaptively reuse the existing single-family home that's on site for prayer meetings and other church offices. The church currently meets at a temporary location on North Salem Street on Saturdays, and is hoping to have a more permanent spot, that they can use sort of intermittently without scheduling. And so Lauren did a good job of explaining the different uses surrounding here. I think we show 3.5 acres here, but in some late discussions with staff, we realized that there's a corner of the property that's not shown on GIS that actually is still part of the property. So it's a little closer to 4 acres, which doesn't materially change in any part of the rezoning. But I did just want to note that for the slide. And as I mentioned, there's an existing single-family home on the site that was built in 1972. Otherwise, it's a very wooded site, like much of the surrounding areas. We just discussed the future traffic circle that'll go at the intersection of Holland and Kelly, and so we've accounted for that. The land use map designation here is medium density residential. And so you'll see that that's the designation that we're asking for. The current zoning is residential agricultural. Obviously, I want to be very clear, we're not proposing a residential subdivision here, but we are rezoning it to medium density residential to be consistent with the land use map and with the surrounding area. There's, and one more point on that slide, it's residential agricultural right now. And when the church initially purchased the site, they looked at, well, what would it take to permanently use this site as a church? There is a special use permit option under the current zoning for the church use, but we thought based on the land use map, sort of comparing the two processes, that it was a better option to go through a rezoning to permanently permit, churches on the property. And then this is a photo of the existing home. You can see some of the landscaping here. I think it looks a little better than this now, actually, since the church has owned it. They've been, doing some maintenance, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like there now. And then we have 13 rezoning conditions. And, if you just glance at them without context, they can be a little confusing. But what we did is try to account for 3 different scenarios that could potentially take place under the zoning that we're requesting. The first is that the church will adaptively reuse the existing home for a church building. So that's, small prayer meetings, church offices, and that would require a minor site plan and to go through that development process after the rezoning. And so, you'll see some conditions in there specify that they're applicable to the existing structure. The second is sort of the long-term sort of dream type plans for the church, which is to build a permanent church home here. That's much further on the horizon. I think that's at least 5-10 years away. But we wanted to go ahead and account for that in the zoning. So you'll see that there are zoning conditions for the non-residential buildings, and that really just means church. And then you also see for the third option that because we have some permitted residential uses, staff also wanted us, and I think it makes sense to include architectural conditions for residential. And so, just sort of going through the conditions, the first is our permitted uses. I do want to be clear that we had some questions about non-residential uses. There are no non-residential uses, convenience stores permitted here, just church or place of worship, and then the uses outlined here. We do have townhouse detached, which is really just, as I understand it, single-family homes that might be on one lot, but not really a townhome in terms of the building structure. The second condition is a max of 19 residential units. Again, there are no plans for a residential subdivision here. That was for consistency with the land use map and what it recommends here. Then the architectural conditions I just mentioned, 5, 6, and 7 were all EAB recommended conditions. And then 8, again, is accounting for the scenario if years down the road, for some reason, residential uses are developed on the property, pet waste stations will be installed. We didn't want, waste stations around a church building. 9, the HOA covenant shall not restrict accessory dwelling units. And then the cross-access stub is condition 10 that Lauren mentioned. And then 11, 12, and 13, we've spent a lot of time with transportation staff on those. Because of the site's location at the corner, there are a lot of access concerns. And so we worked through that very carefully where, we've outlined each of those 3 scenarios I mentioned and what that means for our access. So, in the first scenario of adaptively reusing the structure, we can use the existing driveway or, place a different driveway on Holland. If residential uses are developed, it will be right in, right out only because that's, heavy traffic generator in the AM and PM peak hours. And then finally, if a new building is developed on the site, a new non-residential building, which would be a church building, then we would construct the left turn lane on Holland and do the road widening along the frontage on the other streets. And so we appreciate staff working with us to sort of phase those improvements, to give the town comfort that those long-term improvements will happen and also make the site feasible for the church. And so, given the conditions that we've worked through, we do think that it's in the public interest. It'll allow the rezoning will allow the church to reuse an existing structure, which obviously has efficiency and other benefits. Number 2, it provides the church a new church home in Apex to continue hopefully growing and reaching the community. And so for those reasons, we respectfully ask for your recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, we'll open up public hearing. You have folks registered for the public hearing? No.
We just had the applicant, and as a reminder, we received these emails and as well, and sorry, the letter. I also have them, a copy of each if you would like me to read them out for record.
I think we've all received them.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure just in case.
No, I appreciate that. All right, with that, I will close public hearing and bring it back to the committee for discussion and potential motion.
I guess I have a question more for town staff, and that's, just this whole idea of having church and then having 19 units. Kind of, what is our approach, or why do we feel like we'd want to link that in as, if the church is looking to only have it as a church, why are we piggybacking on residential?
Sure. So a church is permitted in the medium density zoning district. When we had the discussion with the applicant during the pre-application meeting and during, that was always the main goal. And then when the rezoning came in, we had the discussion that, they could think about the residential uses if the rezoning went through and it was approved for the church. But if something happened at the time of site plan and the church use did not end up happening, they would be only stuck with one use. So it gave them the ability to have the more flexibility with the land, with the different uses. So they could potentially end up having a subdivision if the church use did not go into fruition.
They would sell it.
Correct. They had the different options to be more flexible. And with the 19 units, that was proposed by the applicant. So typically with the, obviously the affordable housing plan, 21 units or more is when affordable housing conditions as well come in. So allowing, the accessory apartments as a use too, that allows the ability to have that affordability as aspect and the ability to provide that but also knowing how the size of the 4-point-something acres, the maximum 19, knowing the RCA, the buffers, all the other improvements in there needed for a site plan that allows not the 19. I think that also comes in the hand with, with the 19. I'm assuming it had to do with the affordable housing as well, and
I
yeah.
can speak to that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So the two separate things. I think the thinking when we came in was, we had the discussion: do we just limit this to just a church, or do we go ahead and rezone it to medium density residential and have these residential permitted uses? We talked with staff, and staff said, if we removed the residential uses, we would technically be inconsistent with the land use map. And so, we obviously didn't want to do that. And I think it just makes planning sense, when you are rezoning properties to rezone to the land use map recommendation. The 19 units was a suggestion of affordable housing staff. Actually, I talked to Michael Linsenmeyer, who's since departed, but he called me about this case specifically, and the threshold I think for an affordable commitment is 20 units. Just because of the size of the property here, even if it were developed for residential uses, we couldn't fit anywhere close to 19. And so he said, well, I have to make a policy recommendation that you include 5%. And so we discussed that and thought that capping the units was the best approach. And so that's why we arrived at that sort of weird 19 unit condition. So
the church by itself, rezoned as a church, would not fit in the land use map.
right.
So we're adding homes to make it fit.
Well, just the
Even though we
zoning
know we're not going to build
designation.
homes. It's just kind of,
Well, in 15 years, homes could be built potentially if something happened and the church sold it for some reason, which would be consistent with the land use map's vision for the
I
property.
just think the intent's almost kind of inconsistent with what we're trying to do. I mean, if that's,
Yeah.
If I can interject, a church use is allowed in the medium density zoning district. So that means it is consistent with the 2045 land use map. So the land use map consistency is based upon the zoning districts that our land use map aligns different land use map categories and different zoning districts. And medium density residential zoning district falls into the and all the uses that are in that fall into the medium density land use classification. So the request is consistent whether there were townhomes or other residential uses listed as proposed uses or not. Staff just felt like it gives the property owner flexibility. Should something happen and they couldn't develop it as a church as they envisioned, then they would have that ability to sell it without having to go through the rezoning process again.
So I appreciate your asking the question, because then if I go back to Lauren, what you said, that at the moment, it is, do I understand correctly, it is not inconsistent, it is allowed? Having a place of worship where it's currently zoned is allowed, correct? So then I think I question, there does feel a little bit of
in the current RA zoning
unclear
district.
intent, for lack of a better way to say it. Feels like I'll just leave it at that. Feels a little unclear intent.
With the RA.
You might want to explain the non-conforming lots of record.
Yes.
Thank you.
So currently it's 4.067. Before, with the pre-application meeting, we originally thought it was 3.5, but after this rezoning process came in, our GIS staff went through the legal description and found out it's actually 4.067 acres due to easement related deed issues for this little piece of property back in regarding NCDOT and
Right. Going back to that.
Yeah, so the point is that it's less than 5 acres.
Right.
Which means it's a non-conforming lot of record, which means the property can't be redeveloped because it's too small. So it can only be used as single family.
correct. So
Currently.
that's where I was kind of going with that.
Okay.
So regardless of the acreage, it's under 5. So if they wanted to do anything with it, they would have to rezone to do any permitted uses that weren't what they are doing right now. And what Matthew said, regarding the special use permit or because with the church use or the rezoning use, they would have to basically rezone to a different zoning district to allow that to be compatible with that. So
So the rezoning has to happen.
for them
They
to
could
be able
not-
to do.
They cannot use a special use. So then the 19 units comes in because,
I believe what, and I can let Matthew clarify, is with the affordable housing plan, he was working with housing staff Michael Linsenmeyer, and in order to cap the units, that was where the affordable housing, in order to cap the affordable housing unit, and was the 19 units.
why would we want to cap the affordable housing unit?
Well, so the medium density designation would allow 6 units an acre. And so, we were putting a density limitation on the site because residential uses are permitted under the
And
proposed
with
zoning.
the medium density land use map, it's 3 to 7 units per acre. And so by capping it within the 19 units,
87 units per acre at less than,
you can't go past, I think it was 20, rough math. You can only build at least 20 units in order to not go past that density amount. So by,
It was both the affordable housing issue and realizing that even if they were going to develop as residential, they likely would not be able to fit more than 19 dwelling units on the parcel. So they went ahead and capped the number at what was more realistic for the property.
so
So it's less than what would be allowed if there was no cap, theoretically, if they could fit it all in by a couple of units less.
I'm looking at the recorded survey and it's saying, 4.067 acres, but less the right of way, that 3.6. And I imagine with any additional road improvements, driveways, setbacks, buffers, stormwater control measures, you're going to be substantially under 3.619 acres.
yeah.
So why would we write that in and why we, so right, like at the moment, the use is going to be place of worship. So if it would need to come back, why would we not just at that point deal with whatever the site looks like if it were to go to residential? Why would we cap that at this point? That feels very limiting for an unknown use for an unknown period. Like, why would we not just be all encompassing? Is think of what I'm trying to understand.
I think, as Ms. Bird stated, there's a realization that it's going to be difficult. And so they recognize that the density could be limited. There were some concerns from adjacent property owners about how much development could potentially occur on this parcel. So it helps to address that concern of neighbors as well. So
That feels very inconsistent with the way that we approach development, right?
It's an either or though.
Okay.
So I would applaud the analysis that staff has undertaken here. One, I would compare this, at least just from my little brain, to the rezoning that we saw, I believe, 2 months ago. The two ladies who had property over off of 55, just east of 55, and they wanted to be able to continue their family restaurant. And one of the questions I had asked on that rezoning was, if you decide you want to do something else, or you have success and you want to grow, why not let's go ahead and attack that now as part of this rezoning. And at that time, that analysis made sense as well. But I think that's the thinking here is we know they want to use it as a retreat center, so to speak. But if that doesn't work out and they want to be able to grow the site, I mean, let's think about how, churches are also raising money. I realize that's not part of our conversation here necessarily, but it's certainly part of the business of being a church. And so what are your options? And I think what this does is this simply opens up options, but it caps the residential based on an area. And if you're familiar with this area, it's a lovely area in terms of it presumably looks like older Apex, larger lots, and you can tell by the zoning pattern that either the zoning is the original zoning when it was annexed, and I'm sure staff can correct me where necessary, or this zoning is acting as kind of a holding pattern. And that's what you tend to run into is you have the RR or the RA act as a holding pattern until such time that you have a rezoning come through that is requested and is consistent with the policy. Mm-hmm. And if the policy of the town is for us to have medium density residential in this area, then it makes sense. I guess too, the transportation plan, when I was looking at the thoroughfare plan, Holland looks like it's going to be 3 lanes. Kelly Road will be 4-lane divided. So I think there's certainly anticipated growth in this area. And they're just first out of the gate. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, no, and I actually went directly back to that previous one that we did a couple months ago, and they chose to not, which I feel like is the smart. You have the expansion, but I think then we're coming back and limiting it. So I think my problem is with the capping. I'm excited about this. My problem is with the capping. I feel like I am certain that if there is additional development around, the roundabout being put in, easement, that the residential, and by the way, this is my neighborhood. This is where I walk. This is where I live, right here. So this is where I am. So I know exactly where it is. It would have concerns about more than 19. I'm just saying preliminarily capping it feels like we're setting a bad precedence and a slippery slope.
Feels like to me it's because they're first out. Yeah. If there were other sites that had come through and rezoned, yes, I see your point.
There are other sites that have come down and rezoned just further south.
Yeah,
so
true.
that is happening
from here up to Apex Barbecue. But
and that's been happening too. But we have a motion, or I'm looking for a motion.
I would move approval with conditions as recommended.
Did we have public?
We did. We had public comment.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who seconded that motion?
And I do just want to go on record saying this is a really poor precedent that we are setting. Last time I said that, it literally came up the next time. So.
Land use decisions are not precedent setting.
I kind of thought it made sense with just go ahead and getting it
They
done.
are.
If they were doing townhomes and churches was allowed, it wouldn't be a
All
question.
right. Item number 2, Shelley. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much. Oops, sorry, I got excited.
No problem. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
The next project in front of you is 24 CZ08. This is the Perry Road site that the town is hoping to rezone into a yard waste transfer site. It's located kind of in the southeastern side. If you want to, in your head, break Apex up into quadrants, we're on kind of the southeastern side of things. It is just north of US 1 highway just to the east of Iron Gate subdivision, and Villages at Broadstone Station and the Walmart are kind of to the north east-ish of this. The site consists of 2 parcels. They total about 50.5 acres, and about 2.1 acres on either side of Perry Road is currently cleared, and the town uses that for materials and equipment storage. As you can see on the map, there are several streams running throughout the property and along the western boundary there. We also have a large pond as well. Looks like a very dark shadow, but I promise there's water in it. The parcels are currently zoned light industrial, and the applicant, the town, is asking to rezone those to light industrial conditional zoning. And this is just so that we can add some conditions to get some flexibility from standards in the UDO when we do this. The 2045 land use map designates this area as office employment. So there's a piece that's just office employment, and then a piece that's got two stripes to it, that's office employment and industrial employment as well. If this rezoning is approved, that piece that is only office employment will go from blue to purple and will be industrial employment on the land use map. The rest of it that's striped won't be changed. So it's just that one side that's technically not consistent with the UDO. The applicant conducted the two neighborhood meetings required on April 24th and May 21st of this year. Those neighborhood meeting reports are attached to your staff report. The town is proposing 6 uses, 3 of which would still need a special use permit to be constructed. Those 6 uses are yard waste transfer station, needs a special use permit, utility minor and government service, communication tower commercial, also needs a special use permit, communication tower public safety, also needs a special use permit, and greenway. The town is, as I said, proposing this to get some additional flexibility in developing the site. We're trying to limit the amount of cleared area to basically what's already there, maybe with a small addition, but we're trying to limit that. And to do that, we need some additional conditions to kind of counter some things in the UDO. I'm just going to read out those conditions since they are all of them specific to this site and none of them are things that you have seen in the past. So just to give you an idea, along the western property line here, so where the creek is, there is an existing 100-foot Town of Apex greenway and utility easement that goes from the creek easterly into the property. In addition to this 100-foot easement, the town is also proposing to provide a 30-foot type A buffer along the internal side of that. So it'll be actually 130 feet from the edge of the property line. A 60-foot type A buffer will be provided along US 1 highway all the way across, and a variable width type A buffer of no less than 10 feet and no greater than 60 feet will be provided along the northern property line. The yard waste piles shall have a 25-foot setback from the northern property line and a 5-foot setback from the current right-of-way of Perry Road. These same piles will be limited to 30 feet in height with a slope of no more than 2 to 1. The right-of-way improvements that the UDO would typically require will not be required along Perry Road. If a tree is located within the buffer, within one of the buffers we've discussed, and has a portion of the critical root zone extending outside of that buffer, then the town will not be required to protect that critical root zone outside of the buffer. There will be no buffer provided along the current Perry Road right-of-way, and no building will be required for any use with outdoor storage. Resource conservation area within a perimeter buffer, as shown on a future major or minor site plan, may be relocated through a site plan revision to accommodate any future development with adjoining properties. And any existing lighting will be considered legally established non-conforming lighting and allowed to remain until such a time as the property is redeveloped. The Apex Environmental Advisory Board held a meeting on May 16th. They recommended approval of the conditions that are proposed and had no additional recommendations at this time. Planning staff also recommends approval of this petition with the conditions proposed. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. We also have a representative from Public Works who can help us with that, Matt Wetherill.
Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome.
Do you have any questions for Shelley?
I just have one about the RCA, just for clarification, is the RCA, is it saying on condition number 10 that it's going to absorb some RCA or possibly move it to another site? I'm just confused on which one that is.
So if this site were to say, so at this point, we're looking at a large parcel that we're only planning on doing anything with kind of the eastern portion of. If the town in the future wanted to sell or maybe even redevelop another portion of that property other than what we're using, and we had already set our buffers, our perimeter buffers, then that condition is simply saying that the site plan would have to be revised in order to readjust the location where that RCA goes.
Thank you for clarification.
You're welcome. That's probably one I should have clarified from the beginning, since it's kind of a weird phrasing in an unusual situation. To be clear, that's generally our process. If we have an existing site plan and then somebody wants to adjust it, that's generally the process we have to follow, but we wanted to call that out to make that explicit for everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yard waste transfer station. So that, can you explain kind of more detail, like the amount of traffic coming up and down Perry Road? I was wondering if it's going to be heavy traffic.
Not at all. It's going to be very, very
I mean,
minimal.
heavy as in physically, like weight wise.
So the trucks that are used for this may be on the heavier side, but there will not be very many trips for it. Essentially what's happening is the town's current location for transferring yard waste, for taking it down south of 540, that general area, is no longer going to be accessible to us. And we need an intermittent place where the yard waste guys can take their regular trucks, put it all out there, get everything sorted, and then load up a bigger truck to make it more fuel efficient to take it to the new location. And this is just what that is. It's just going to be those yard waste guys emptying their existing vehicles, which are large but not much bigger than a box truck, really. And then a couple of 18-wheelers every day or two, every couple of days. I'll let Matt
I guess
explain
one
more of that.
reason I'm asking just about the condition of the road, Perry Road, and getting out to where you're trying to go to as far as the heavy equipment and.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. Part of the reason that we're not recommending any improvements at the moment is there's on the land use, or on the transportation plan, it calls for Perry Road to be realigned in the future. And doing heavy road improvements right now, when that might be shifted later on, seems, it's a little more uncertain at the moment than what we were willing to require the town to do at the moment.
Okay.
But Matt can answer you about the type of traffic and everything if you need.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. Yeah, I'm Matt Weatherall, so thank you to staff and thank you guys for considering all this. To answer the question, yeah, we're looking at, rather than sending all of our individual residential yard waste collection trucks down to processing sites, we use this as a consolidation area. So really we'd be looking at one, maybe two larger, semi trucks, consolidating all that and taking it down to another processing facility. So not a great increase in volume of trucks down there, but we will have some heavier trucks. But as Shelley mentioned, there are some plans in the future to realign Perry Road.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you. And one other question, I guess, Shelley, this is probably in your court. Is there a height limitation on the communication towers?
Communication towers are typically limited to, I think it's 190 feet for commercial and 225 for the public safety ones, but I will double check that number. I know that there is a height limit on them.
I didn't know it was gonna be like some of the towers you see are 1,000 that are.
Definitely not. We don't let towers get to the point where they have to have those red flashing things on them to avoid aircraft. So it's below that level. But I will make sure to have that number ready in case council has the same question.
And those are special use.
Those are special use permit, yes. They have a site plan that goes along with them as a part of the special use permit. And special use permits are quasi judicial public hearings, so they go to a board of adjustment for evaluation. And in that packet, it'll have the maximum height of the tower and the fall zones and all that stuff.
Very good.
Any additional questions for Shelley?
Will the public be able to use this site to drop off, or the?
Not really the intent of it. It's more intended for town trucks to go and combine their loads, so it's more fuel efficient to take a larger load instead of sending smaller trucks multiple times a day. Most of the town, to my knowledge, everybody in the town who's within the annexed corporate limits have access to yard waste in front of their homes. Okay.
Thank you, Shelley. Nobody signed up. All right, I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing and bring us back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
I believe it's a better site than they first proposed, maybe a year ago, at the end of, Prince Dead End Road. I will, if you recall that one coming up, I believe there's not gonna be a great site for this, I don't believe. But this one is kind of out and, I think it's better than the last time and
Yeah,
I would be in favor.
is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I like it.
That's a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that measure passes unanimously. Thank you, Shelley. June. Public hearing and possible motion regarding rezoning case 242C Z09 Castleberry Preserve.
Good afternoon. This is located in the northwest area of the town. Castleberry Reserve PUD plan is located south of Castleberry Road and west of Wimberley Road. And the zoning districts are planned unit development. And then this little section that we're looking at adding tonight is Wake County Residential 80W. And so we're going to refer to that as the access road area. It's 0.672 acres. And they're proposing to bring that into the Castleberry Reserve PUD plan. So it'd be the PUD conditional zoning. If, let me see, the 2045 land use map, Castleberry Reserve is low density, and then rural density residential for that access road area. If it is rezoned as proposed, the land use would be low density. And so the existing conditions for the access road area includes a creek, mature trees, and an unpaved driveway. So the reason for this rezone is for the access road from Castleberry Reserve PUD to connect up with Wimberley Oaks Drive Stubb Street. And the revisions are just to add that 0.672 acres, and there's no density increase. So the other revision would just be no buffer along that road. UDO does not require any buffer along a residential street. So all approved PUD plan uses and development standards would apply to this little area. They had 2 neighborhood meetings, and it was on May 7th and May 29th, and those are included in your packet. And they also went to the May 16th Environmental Advisory Board meeting. They recommended the conditions that were approved previously. And they also recommended all homes shall provide a 220-volt outlet in the garage for electric vehicle charging. The applicant did not add that recommendation. And planning staff recommends approval of 24CZ09 PUD as the applicant has proposed. And the 2045 land use map designates the access road area as rural density residential classification, but the applicant proposes a rezoning to PUD conditional zoning district to incorporate the property into the Castleberry Reserve PUD. If the access road area is rezoned as proposed, the 2045 land use will automatically be amended to low density residential. So the proposed rezoning is reasonable and is in the public interest because the proposed rezoning will provide that necessary infrastructure connection to Wimberley Oaks Road. And also the all approved PUD plan uses and development standards would apply to the area to be rezoned, and no additional residential density is proposed. And we're happy to answer your questions, and the applicant is here tonight.
Thank you, June. Do you have any questions for June? Okay.
I recall this coming in before.
Yes.
I guess
So-
this is twice, yeah, right?
This is the
There-
second.
This is the, yeah.
Right, this is the second amendment. So what happened was, that was the Johnson parcel that they included, it was about 20 acres. That was approved in April, and this property, it just, different property owners, so they had different timing. So that's why they wanted to go ahead with the Johnson parcel, get that done, and then they had to come in, meeting up with that property owner to, you know, go through negotiation.
And it seems like this was that important piece to connect to Wimberley Oaks.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, June.
Good evening again. Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe. Also with me on this one is Patty Harrell-Hilburn with McKim and Creed, our civil engineer. You have heard this case a couple of times, and this is hopefully the last and final time. As June mentioned, the original PUD was approved in September of last year, and then the Johnson parcel, which was about 13 acres, was added, approved by council in April. And so now, you know, we're back for a very narrow amendment to add our second point of access to the PUD. And so we've known the entire time that our second access road would come from Wimberley Oaks Drive that connects to Wimberley. There is an existing easement there now, a driveway for the property owners that are in that section. You can see the parcel outlined in red. And so we knew that that would be our second access point. We weren't sure if it would need to be rezoned because it will ultimately be dedicated as public right-of-way and it'll be a road. So, you know, we weren't sure if it needed to come into the PUD. After talking with staff, staff was clear that it did need to be part of the PUD, just sort of for consistency's sake, to have it all be zoned the same. And so you can see in red what that does to the overall PUD acreage. It takes it from 9 to 10 parcels and from 103.42 to 104.092 acres. So those changes are pretty minimal. Again, this is just another slide that sort of gives you an idea of what's there now. You can see diesel path shown here. That's a private driveway. And so this property owner, you know, uses diesel path to get to Wimberley Oaks. And then our new street will come through, you know, right across where the driveway is now, and connect to Wimberley Oaks Drive and be public right of way. And so, you know, we've shown that area in blue on the PUD plan, and it's just the area that's necessary for the street. So almost that entire acreage there will be public right of way once it's constructed and turned over to NCDOT or the town for maintenance. And this slide is just to reiterate that those conditions that were approved in September of last year, and then again in April when we added the Johnson property, none of those are changing. We're not proposing any more units. It's an overall density of 1.65 units an acre. We're not touching the game lands buffer, which is, you know, along the southern portion of the site. We're not changing the tree canopy commitment, the 3 affordable units, the connection to the American Tobacco Trail, which is off-site. Recall there was another off-site connection to the sidewalk in Lake Castleberry, which will be made as part of this project. So again, it's just a very narrow request just to add the area in blue. And then, you know, we're already showing in our subdivision plans that area connected as a public right-of-way. So this just, you know, makes everything consistent and allows us to keep moving forward to the next step. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Will Wimberley Oaks need any type of improvements to connect out?
It won't. No, it'll need improvements obviously the cul-de-sac, I think it's a bulb. I don't know that there's curb and gutter on the south side. We'll obviously have to connect that, but I don't believe we'll be abandoning any right of way or making any other improvements. Is that right? Russell, you want to come up?
We've been talking to the engineering team about it because there's a stream crossing there. So we're looking at reconstructing a portion of that road as part of their plan. So the intent is that hopefully we can remove that cul-de-sac bulb and have a continuous street there based on our latest conversation.
And from a transportation standpoint, you said over 50 dwelling units, you have to have a second point of access. Is that right? Is that UDO? Yes. So how this, if there's no addition right now to the number of dwellings, how did this get through with only one access point before?
We would not have been able to approve their master subdivision plan until such time that they acquired the ability to provide that second point of access in their subdivision plans. So they were moving forward with the rezoning, knowing that they were working toward getting that second point of access.
I feel like this was actually a part of the conversation, if I'm vaguely remembering it.
Okay. Well, this also brings up, this is maybe kind of a side note, but there was also off of 64, there was a neighborhood, and it does not have, I mean, it was over 50 dwelling units, and there was only one point of access off 64. And that was a concern that was brought up, but it's kind of, there's a pond, south side 64.
Was that an apartment development?
It was.
So in the case of when a development constructs a thoroughfare or a major collector street, then the number of access points are counted from that major collector or thoroughfare and not from the, so in that case, it was not counted from 64, it was counted from the major collector that they are building and take access from. So that's how the UDO is worded for counting those points.
Okay.
They're basically getting credit for building a significant roadway.
Because it was going to need 3 egress and regress points before then until the road switched over.
Because the type of road that was being built was, okay. Understood. Thank you. Thanks.
Do we have any additional questions for June or the applicant?
I do. I recall there were some issues with the access point on Castleberry. Was that kind of worked out with the homeowners who reached out?
It was, yes. So there were, we spoke to a few different homeowners there. Mr. Renfer, who lives here in this house, and I think the house sits, right about here. And we had showed initially our driveway lining up with his house. And he had asked if we could shift it to the west so it wouldn't, cars wouldn't shine into his, front yard and living room when they turn right. And so we did shift it west. Then there were some homeowners here who weren't happy about that. And so we've tried to keep it here rather than moving it further west, because there's existing vegetation there. There are trees on the other side of the road that separate the driveway from the rear of these lots. And so, we felt like that was the best possible place for it, especially considering most vehicles will turn right. Well, almost vehicles will turn right onto Castleberry because Castleberry dead ends on the other side. And so most of those, the headlights will be going right towards Wimberley. And so that's the final driveway location.
Also about that road, since it's a no outlet road, there's no markings currently. Will they update that?
I believe we would be required to stripe the road for our frontage. I don't know, Russ. It's an NCDOT road. So, we'll have to coordinate the section with them. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, at this time, there's no plan to do any striping.
And then there'll be a stop sign at the access point, correct?
All right. If there are no additional questions, I will open up for a public hearing. Do we have anybody sign up? No. Nope. Okay. All right. With that, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
overall, it looks straightforward. It looks like just connection point, which is needed anyways for the neighborhood to, I mean, it's, makes it more viable. Actually, it's the only thing that makes it viable. And so, it's well needed, so I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right, is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve, let's see, rezoning case 24CZ09, the Castleberry Reserve PUD amendment.
All right, thank you so much. Can I get a second?
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that measure passes unanimously. And we will move on to new business, of which there is none. So we'll take one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Oh, sorry.